Welcome back to my top 30 films of the decade, part 2, numbers 30 through 1. Let's see what my number 1 favorite film of the decade is, shall we? If you didn't see part 1, that was just the honorable mentions. If you want to watch that first, go ahead. If you want to watch this first, that's fine with me. They're all great films in my opinion. This is just my personal take. So, yeah. Watch the videos in whichever order you want, and check out the movies if you haven't seen them. First, I want to make a mention of a miniseries. Something that was critically acclaimed when it came out, but I don't really hear a lot of people talking about it anymore. And that is 2016's Horace and Pete, from Louis C.K. Yeah, I know, Louis C.K. And hey, if it makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to watch it. It's fine. But if you do watch it, you'll be witnessing what I think is one of the greatest pieces of media to come out of the decade. This series is just masterful. Amazing directing, acting, set design. It's all the best parts of theater and television and film. Some parts feel like a play, other parts feel like a sitcom, but without a laugh track. In that sense, it's kind of like an anti-sitcom. The scenes play along as if they're situations in a comedy, but there's no laugh track, and the situations are very dire and sad. I think it's also fair to warn you that this is probably one of the most depressing things I have ever seen. And trust me, I've seen a lot of downers. Heck, Louis C.K. himself even gave a warning to people that you should wait a week in between watching episodes. Too bad I didn't do that. Whoops. I'm not kidding, this series left me in a pretty bad headspace after I watched the ending. But the acting is just marvelous. Louis C.K. gives probably his best performance ever. Steve Buscemi is great to watch. Perhaps my favorite character, though, is Uncle Pete, played by Alan Arkin. C.K. originally wanted Joe Pesci to play the part. However, due to his retirement, he turned it down, and the role went to Alan Arkin. I love Joe Pesci, but my god, Arkin just kills it here. Uncle Pete is a cranky prick of an old man, but he's built with a lot of depth, too. One of the best episodes is literally just an hour of a conversation. The first half of the episode is just one take of an actress just giving a monologue. After that is a display of Louis C.K.'s incredible acting abilities. It's just flawless. Some scenes are kind of funny, but Louis himself said that it's meant to be more of a dramatic tragedy. So if you can stomach one of the most depressing things ever made, along with Louis C.K., I think you'll really be able to appreciate what this miniseries pulled off. I love it, and I think it's masterfully made. I hope more people see it. The Babadook. One of my favorite horror films of the past few years. In the vein of something like The Shining, it takes a very real terror, but puts a supernatural spin on it. This film was directed by Jennifer Kent, who also released The Nightingale last year. I gotta say, she's becoming not just a great woman director, but a great horror film director too. The Nightingale was so uncomfortably disturbing. The Babadook isn't quite like that, but it taps into some psychological problems. Essie Davis gives a completely flooring performance. She also should have been nominated, but you know, the Academy doesn't like horror movies. So many things about this film are exceptional. The directing, the dark lighting, even the sound design in one scene is just so ear-piercingly great. The film is a drama about a grief-stricken single mother trying to bridle herself between her anxiety and her motherly responsibilities. I love the juxtaposition of her against all the other mothers who seem so much more well-dressed and put together, while she's constantly in a robe with messy hair. I love what this film represents. I love how it can tap into anyone's souls, whether they relate to it or not. The Babadook is a terrifying film that shows us that the true monster is within us all. Blade Runner 2049, directed by Denis Villeneuve. I'll admit, I'm more partial to the original. While 2049 is great, I really love the atmosphere of the 1982 version. I also miss the soundtrack. Don't get me wrong, 2049 had a great electronic soundtrack. But man, how can you copy Vangelis? The sounds were so soothing and hypnotic, and even gave the film a noir kind of feeling as well. Aside from that though, 2049 is great, and is a science fiction masterpiece of the decade. Roger Deakins took over for director of photography, a role which he was perfectly suited for. Every shot in this film is just vibrant and colorful. The color corrections in this film are just amazing. Besides being a great film, it's also a great sequel. It's not a film 30 years later just cashing on nostalgia. 2049 expands on the world, characters, and themes of the original Blade Runner. I love what this film says about memory and identity. Even some of the effects are just perfect. I love the scene in which one character is reflecting the movements of a hologram. It just baffles me how they were even able to pull that off. Blade Runner is an epic science fiction film. There's a lot of dramatic and intense scenes all throughout. Beautiful to look at, beautiful to enjoy, and very thought-provoking as well. Wolf Children. Okay, this might be a personal choice, but really, I think Wolf Children is one of the most beautiful films of the decade. Being more than just an anime movie, Wolf Children is an ode to mothers and the kids they raise. It's about being different and expressing who you are, and just how your mother can guide you into that. The animation on the characters is just so cute. Basically, a woman falls in love with a werewolf, and she has kids. Unfortunately, the father dies, and she must take care of them on her own. If you think that sounds like Twilight, well, shut up, it's not. It's a lot better. It really gets you into this tranquil, peaceful world that they're in. Don't get me wrong, there are hardships, but it just captures these lifelike feelings so intrinsically. While the fact that they're werewolves is not the icing on the cake, I wouldn't say, but it's to easier represent how unique the children are. That's what the fantasy genre should do. It takes real-life feelings but explores them even more, helps us to understand them better. Anyone who's ever had a mother, or anyone who is a mother, I strongly recommend Wolf Children. It's one of the most beautiful, heartwarming films I've seen of the past few years. Inside Out. Okay, another kind of personal choice. I know some people aren't as crazy about this as me, and I can see why. But I love this, and I think this is one of the best kids' movies of the decade. It's funny, creative, and above all, insightful. I love the designs of the mind. I love just how imaginative this world is inside of us. I love the character designs and how colorful the cast is. Some of the jokes in this movie were kind of dumb dad jokes, but others I legitimately laughed out loud in the theater. But most importantly, I love what this film has to say about emotions. I talked a little bit about this in my Dark Side of the Bright Side video, and just how it shows that all the emotions are important, not just joy. That sometimes we need to feel sad, or angry, or even scared. It's a very deep concept that I don't think has been explored in really anything that I can think of, even for adults. Creative, fun, and surprisingly insightful. I love Inside Out, one of my favorite Pixar films. Waves. This is a very recent film to put on here, but that's just how confident I am in this. I'm also surprised to see a lot of people don't care for this movie. One review I saw even calling it the gayest movie he ever saw. Which is weird, because I don't remember the film really being about gay people, but whatever. Maybe he's some kind of film genius that can read in the characters. Anyway, this movie just blew me away. I loved everything about it. I love its message and its narrative structure as well, as just how they go hand in hand with each other. The story very purposely serves the message, but that doesn't take away from any of the authenticity that you feel. It's almost traditional in a way, which is why I feel it will really stand the test of time in years to come. Trey Edward Schultz's cinematography just shines. Almost every scene of this film was just beautiful, and I wanted a poster of it. It's masterfully directed, masterfully shot with long takes, 360 spins, and just illuminating shots of the scenery. The actors are all great too, even from the kids. The film is about toughness and love. Probably love overall. But as the title would suggest, it's about the waves and ripples that we create in our lives, and just how that can affect other people. As the choices of two characters in the beginning affect two other characters later on in the film. It's about how we can take something negative and turn it positive. How we can turn our grief into strength. I'm maybe not a fan of every scene. There's a part where one of the girls starts doing drugs at a party, and I thought that was really weird because it seemed like the film was kind of criticizing that in another scene. It's almost like people don't know that teenagers do other things besides party and get high. But it's a small criticism for what I got. I hope people start to see this film the way I do because I love it. It's become one of my favorite movies, and I hope to see it again. Whiplash. The film is called that because that is what you will feel like by the end of this. What is Whiplash? Is it about following your dreams? Is it about trying to be tough? Is it a character study? Or is it trying to tell us that maybe we shouldn't push ourselves too far? You know those Oscar bait sports films where the athlete rises to the top and the music swells? Well, Whiplash is sort of the antithesis of that. Our protagonist wants to be a jazz drummer. However, his instructor puts him to the test and shows him that it's not easy. I've been following J.K. Simmons since he was J. Jonah Jameson, and here he completely proves that he is a phenomenal actor. His best performance he's ever given. He is just explosive in this film. Angry and full of rage, but he knows how to do that, with control and depth. It also has one of the best endings of the decade I've ever seen. It's just a wild ride, and I can't think of another film of this caliber, which is just about music, to be like that. A movie about jazz to feel like something like Good Time or Uncut Gems. I just can't imagine how someone could pull that off. It's amazing. See for yourself and experience Whiplash on your own. The Social Network. In a theatrical way, this is a masterpiece. Fantastic acting, brilliant screenplay. The dialogue is just amazing. There's so many analysis videos just on how great the dialogue is, and how important it is to make it good. Regular thriller director David Fincher took a step back to make a biopic, or semi-historical movie. Is it historical? It's not that old, come on. But also proves to be just as perverse as any of his darker films. For what seems like a film about an entrepreneur gaining fame and success, is a thinly veiled criticism not only against him, but our society and the way we communicate and socialize. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross found their footing with this soundtrack, which really got them started into doing more movie scores. And it is perfect. It's a very quiet soundtrack. Some parts calm, other parts dramatic, other parts sad and regretful. It's one of those films where the story is great, but everything in the film just brings the story to life and makes it so much more visceral. David Fincher, Aaron Sorkin, Trent Reznor, and Atticus Ross. It's a great movie. It's not a film celebrating the rise of Facebook. It's a deeply painful drama about how disconnected we've become and what we do to make up for it. One of my favorite directors of all time is Jim Jarmusch. He's been making films since the late 80s, but I honestly think he's put out some of his best work this decade. This decade, Jarmusch really peaked, making two of his masterpieces, Only Lovers Left Alive and Patterson. These films— No! No! Go! Go! Go lay down! Get out of here! Go! Go outside! Go! Here. I don't think these are just two good films he released of the decade. I think these are in his top 5 best films. Only Lovers Left Alive is a vampire film. When trying to pin down the genre, I was calling it a comedy or a drama, or just a low-budget indie film. Strangely, one of the genres I didn't think of was horror until at the end, because it's really not. Only Lovers Left Alive is a celebration of art, science, and the crazy people who think of these ideas. Jarmusch is quite a weird artist himself, so I really love how this film, he pays tributes to all the mad geniuses out there. Much like Wolf Children, the characters are vampires, but that's to represent the kind of unique personalities they have. Adam and Eve are two different kinds of people you'll find in the arts community. Eve is slightly more optimistic and outgoing, while Adam is constantly depressed and brooding. He feels like the world is changing, that he's an outsider. He longs for the better days. There's also the character of Eve's sister, who you'll find people like this in the art community, trust me. Someone who thinks she's different, but is really just following the norms, and bothering everybody with her free-spirited annoyingness. I love this scene when they kick her out, that's great. The visuals are just tantalizing. There's so many great colors and shadows. The editing and camera work is so playful as well. The music in this film was done by Squirrel, Jim Jarmusch's own band. And it's so dark and eerie, but goth and cool at the same time, which is what this film is. Again, I can't describe this film as a genre. We're just watching these two characters just go about their lives, and I love it. I love these two characters. I love watching them. I love watching them love each other, converse, and things like that. To give you an example, I watched this movie about 3 or 4 times in a month when I first saw it. That's just how rewatchable it is. Jarmusch is a big fan of music, and he composes his films almost like albums. They're not really stories, but they're moods. Different variations of that mood, stretched across the film. And Only Lovers Left Alive is just a cool gothic record. You want to listen to it and watch it again and again. A few years later, he released Patterson, which I loved just as much. Jarmusch is known for his minimalistic style, which he does in a lot of his films. Patterson is very simplistic. However, I feel like this is the first film where Jarmusch celebrates the mundane. Adam Driver excellently plays an everyday man. He wakes up, goes to work, writes poetry, talks to his wife, meets some friends at a bar, walks his dog, and that's it. But I love it. The film is very competently made too. Jarmusch returns with Squirrel to make a very tranquil soundtrack. There's also some great editing choices as Patterson is writing poetry, or going about his day. It's visually pleasing to look at as you enjoy this man's life. I love his relationship with his wife. I love how he just loves his normal life and he's so content with it. I feel like that's a great virtue to have that many people don't think about. In a world where we're constantly trying to get ahead all the time, I think we can really learn something from Patterson. His wife tries to inspire him to get out, to publish his poetry, to be something more. But Patterson doesn't really have any interest in that. He doesn't want anything. He has everything that he wants. Some people watch a superhero film and come out wanting to be that superhero. After finishing this film, I wanted to be Patterson. He just has a perfect idyllic life. Patterson is such a sweet, charming film that really anyone can watch. Our rating is stupid. This is a G-rated movie. Come on. I'm a huge supporter of simplicity. I love when films are just a slice of life, because that's what life really is. It's not constant conflict throughout. It's real life as it really is, and that's interesting to me. I love my heavy, dark films, but I love films like Patterson, where I can just get wrapped up in the warm, comfortable, inviting universe. It's so content, and I just want to live there for the rest of my life. Some people may say it's boring, but I can't get enough of it. Check it out and get wrapped up in the world of Patterson yourself. The Act of Killing, the only documentary on my list, is a slightly experimental one, but a heavily weighted one. In Indonesia, the murderers of accused communists are given the chance to make films about the killings. The type of film they make is anything they want. Some of them are crime, some of them are horror, some of them are fantasy, or even musicals. A bizarre concept, I know, but what comes out of this project are some of the most raw emotions ever captured on film. You hear about the horrors of what really happened. You get to meet these awful men who did these things. Their attitudes range from being nostalgic, but by the end they get what they deserve. Some of them break down crying in regret. And you feel like a lot has really changed in the subjects by the end. It's tough to say it, but you actually kind of start to sympathize with these killers. And that is what's truly difficult about this film. You see the stark reality of the blood and murder of the times. You see what kind of things affected them and what led them to be this way. Some even saying that American films influenced them. And I love how the act of killing isn't really criticizing anyone. It's just showing things as it is. It just shows us things as they happen, history and the present. I think this is an important film for everyone to watch, whether you be a history or a movie buff. It's such a potent film all around. The Wind Rises, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. I've idolized Miyazaki since I first got into animation and film, back in high school. Miyazaki's finale may not be a fantasy film, rather a biopic, but it's just as magical as anything else he's done. I love this character, just how passionate he is about building planes. He's a bit shy and odd, but he's very likable. There's some great dream sequences in here, some great flight scenes of course, even a great earthquake scene too, which is animated amazingly. In a way, this actually seems fitting to be Miyazaki's final film. It's about the legacy of a great man who inspired something Miyazaki is passionate about. It's a swan song from one legend to another. Magical, beautiful, expertly animated. The Wind Rises is the best Ghibli film of the decade and one of Miyazaki's masterpieces, and is a perfect ending to the legendary Miyazaki. The Raid 2. What? An action movie? On a list of foreign indie films? Yeah, that's right. I love a good action movie, as long as it's made well, which I'll admit rarely happens. But then once in a while, we get films like The Raid. I put the second one on here, not the first one, because I do think it's a little better. I love the first movie, but I feel like the second one kind of improved a little bit on some parts. It's non-stop, heart-pounding action, but it's done incredibly well and really gets you into the scenes. I can't tell you how refreshing it is to see an action movie with not just competent cinematography. I can't tell you how refreshing it is to see an action film with confident cinematography and camera work. Most films just disregard it or just use that terrible shaky cam and fast editing. The Raid, however, uses the camera work to enhance the action scenes and makes them even more exhilarating. I wish movies would take lessons from this film. We had Mad Max Fury Road, which had a lot of good practical effects and visual effects. And when I was younger, I really enjoyed martial arts films like those of Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee. So I greatly appreciate the stunts and everything they went for here. The choreography is just so exciting to watch, and coupled with the camera work, you'll be pinching yourself. Not as deep as some of the other films, but just a great, heart-pounding action film that I think other films should really take notes from. Drive, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. Maybe people just want the same action movies, looking at the backlash that Drive got. Drive was never meant to be an action film, it's more of a character study. Part drama, part noir. Ralph the Movie Maker referred to us as an anti-action film, and since he said that, I really have to agree. There's a lot of soft lighting and neon colors. Rather than our protagonist being driven by revenge, he's motivated by love. And it's a character study of what kind of person he really is. Is he a violent psychopath? Or is he actually a compassionate, nice guy? I also have to mention the soundtrack and the standout film, Human Being. This is not the type of music I usually listen to, but if you put it with a great film, I'll add it to my playlist. The visuals are not only vibrant, but they capture such sharp angles, immaculate staging and close-ups of our characters. It's a lot like Taxi Driver, where you have to read the camera decisions and what's really going on, what everything all represents. Not in a strictly metaphorical way, but just in relation as to how it's portraying our protagonist. It's a tense, bloody, and beautiful art house action noir film. Whatever you want to call it, it's great. It's fascinating in both its themes, characters, and just as a piece of filmmaking. A unique kind of movie that we don't get quite often. Moonlight. One of my favorite Best Picture winners of the decade. Look at that, the Academy chose a good movie about race. Let me start off by saying, I really relate to Chiron. No, I'm not black, I'm not gay, I didn't live as poor as he did, or as awful family conditions as him. However, what I do relate to is being an outsider, feeling like a misfit, and just trying to find out who you are. You don't even know who you are yet you're constantly being harassed for it. Chiron is one of my favorite characters of the decade. The film covers many themes, of which I mentioned before, of race, homosexuality, poverty, class. But what the film is really about to me is identity. The film is also about the former things I mentioned, but it's how it all plays into our character's identity. We watch him grow up, we watch him change. Literally, as he's played by 3 different actors and takes on different names in each one. I feel like this took the concept of Boyhood, but actually built upon it. Now, I actually liked Boyhood, but it felt like it was kind of missing something. Moonlight, although it didn't actually film someone for 12 years, it had more of a point. Of growing up, how time and our environment shape us. Does that truly affect who we are? I just love the cinematography, the soft focus and the lighting. I love the waves at the beach. It's a beautiful movie, but a tragic movie. It's truly tragic as to who Chiron becomes at the end. I'll try not to spoil anything, but it really starts to make you think, how many more people are like this out there? Is Chiron the only one? Or are there thousands, maybe even millions? Such a visceral film, and one that I deeply connected to, even though I didn't think I would. Go see it. Shame, directed by Steve McQueen. Hunger and Shame, I think, are the director's 2 best films. I like 12 Years a Slave and Widows, but I don't think those are nearly as good as his first 2 efforts. Shame is another film which I strangely relate to. The film is about a sex addict. Okay, get out of the comments, guys, come on. It's a harshly realistic portrayal of that. While people like to pick on sex addiction, Shame treats it as a true addiction and shows just how harmful it can really be to anyone who's not a celebrity. The root cause of it is just loneliness. Our character can't emotionally connect with anyone, so he seeks out companionship in the only way he knows how. And that's what I really love about this film. It's truly about loneliness and the things we do in order to feel emotionally needed. That's further explored in the relationship of Michael Fassbender's character and his sister played by Carey Mulligan. It shows that he loves her, but he rarely shows it, only in one specific beautiful scene. Other times he quarrels with her and is always frustrated with her at the same time. This film also shows that Michael Fassbender is one of the best actors we have right now, even if he rarely picks great movies. Steve McQueen uses his groundbreaking camera techniques. His long takes really capture the realness and uncomfortableness of these scenes. Each part is just expertly directed, and only someone like Steve McQueen can pull off such a truly sad but masterful drama. A great look into sex addiction and loneliness. Shame is one of my favorite films of the decade. Enemy. The 3rd film directed by Denis Villeneuve. One of the most prosperous directors now. But this is my favorite film of his, Enemy. A surreal, artistic, and psychological film about duality and temptations. Jake Gyllenhaal proves once again that he's one of the best actors of the decade, in case you can't tell, and gives an incredible dual performance. Or is it dual? I love the look of this film. Everything is muted yellow. There's constant symbolism of spiders and webs. It's not just a critique of society, it's to represent how our protagonist feels like he's trapped by society, in a web almost, while the spider represents his temptations to get out, to seek a more adventurous, freeing life. To this day, there's still constant debate on what all the symbols and everything means. I love the scenes in which the 2 Gyllenhaals meet in the room. There's only a couple scenes, and it's the only time they ever meet each other, so perhaps there is no double. But just look at the way this scene is shot. Oh my god, it's beautiful. It's beautiful but dark. It's Denis Villeneuve's 3rd film on this list, and Jake Gyllenhaal's 3rd film on this list, and probably both their best of the decade. Enemy is a trippy and tantalizing mystery. I recommend it to anyone looking for thrills or philosophy. Once Upon a Time in Anatolia. My favorite film from the great art house director Nuri Bilge Ceylan. A very slow and long film, but that's all purposeful. The film takes place in less than 24 hours, and is about a crew of people trying to find a murdered body in the outskirts of a village. This movie isn't really about any police work, but it's more about the characters, their journey, their conversations, and what they learn over the course of the film. You could kind of say it's like No Country for Old Men if directed by Andrei Tarkovsky. The film has a lot of dark philosophical discussions, but also offers a glimmer of hope at the end. Not to say the film has masterful cinematography. Not only are there long takes, but the majority of the film is shot at night, using only car headlights as a lighting source. And not only are the shots visible, but it's enticing. A long film to really make you feel the foreboding broodingness of our characters, just as they contemplate the horrible things that have happened and what they should do with it afterwards. The film makes you sit through every second of their agonizing dreariness. It's definitely slow, and may not be all that exciting to some, but it's fascinating and is a deep experience if you can pay attention. Once Upon a Time in Anatolia was probably my favorite film of 2012. Slow, but a grand experience, and the adventure it takes to the dark depths of the human soul. The Handmaiden, directed by Park Chan-wook. In my Koreans film list, I mentioned that Park Chan-wook is my favorite South Korean filmmaker of all time. So it's perhaps no surprise that The Handmaiden would be on my top 30. He surprisingly hasn't made that many films this decade, but I don't put The Handmaiden on just because of that. I think The Handmaiden really is his masterpiece. Maybe his third best film he's ever made. It's his best since Oldboy, trust me. The Handmaiden is one of the most unpredictable films I've seen. You have no idea where it's gonna go. You get invested in these characters. You get invested in what's going on, and then suddenly the film shifts and decides to go in another direction. You're never entirely sure what's going to happen until the end, but it's a joyful, thrilling ride the whole time. Some parts are beautiful, some parts are funny, as are most Park Chan-wook films, often blending different styles. Park's immaculate framing comes into play once again. Not only being beautiful on its own terms, but it really captures the time period and the setting as well. Heck, it's hard to even describe the plot to you guys. But I think it's best if you go in not knowing anything. There's a grand orchestral score to really make you know what the characters are going through is serious, despite how exploitive the film might be. Do not watch this with your parents, or your grandmother, or your girlfriend, or most people who are easily disturbed by explicit lovemaking scenes. Let's put it that way. Park is a director who never holds back. But in the case of The Handmaiden, that's good. Because this film just screams masterpiece in every one of its elements. Anyone can enjoy this movie. Well, anyone over the age of 18, let's say that. So I strongly recommend it. One of my favorite directors of all time is Hirokazu Kurita. He's been making films since the 90s, but the 2010s were quite a prolific era for him. He made a film nearly almost every year this decade. Two of his best films he ever made, though, were Like Father, Like Son and Shoplifters. Nobody since Yasuhiro Ozu has been able to master the art of simplicity, poverty, and family dynamics in such a genuine way. I mentioned how much I love slice-of-life films, and I think Kurita is a master of simplicity. Probably the second best director of all time to do it so well. They're not completely nothing films like a Jarmusch movie. They have plots and things going on, but they're presented as so lifelike. There's a lot of scenes where we just get to be with the families and characters, watch them bond, get to really know them. And then when something does happen, we get to see how they react. We know how these characters are normally, but then we get to really see them and know them when they're put into extreme situations. Much in the case of Like Father, Like Son, for instance. A film about two boys switched at birth is about the families trying to cope with the change and with the mistakes that were made. However, there's an equal amount of screen time where we just get to see the families. Even the scenes where they are talking about the situation, where they're talking to each other and their thoughts and feelings. It's very deep and intrinsic. But it's also just beautiful in a simple way. You really feel like these are real people, and they're going through something that deeply affects them, and you can really understand how and why. Like Father, Like Son covers the topics of family, father and son relationships, but of course is an exploration of real people, something Kurita is great at. His next film, Shoplifters, is a slightly more loose narrative. It's about the same themes such as poverty and family, although a major conflict doesn't arise until about the last quarter of the film. However, that doesn't stop you from being invested in this family, the trials they go through, and the good times they have. Lily Frankie is a Kurita regular, who I've been watching for a while. I was so glad to finally see him in a lead role, and he did not take that opportunity lightly. He's such a joy to watch here. It's an interesting take on family when you realize that they're not a normal, traditional family. A couple of the kids are adopted, I don't even think the married couple are married, but you find out about that as the film goes on. It's a great statement on family as a whole. As the title may suggest, they're a poor family, so in order to make ends meet, they have to shoplift. But that's really not what the film is about. It's about beautiful moments, simplistic moments, of just getting to be with these people. It's such a calming, comforting joy, yet at the same time is very critical of social classes, and Japanese politics as well. This is one of the best families I've seen in a movie. Regardless if they're blood related or not, these people really belong together. And the film makes sure you feel like that way up until the end. One of Kurita's best without a doubt. Don't miss out on Shoplifters. If you're not sure about loose narrative plots, I think you should start with this one. You love all these characters, you love their chemistry and their relationship. I just love these whole slice of life films. It feels so much more real and genuine, and it really gets me into the plots more. Check out Shoplifters and see Hirokazu Koreeda's films. Some of my other favorites include Afterlife, Nobody Knows, and Still Walking. He's had quite a few films this decade, such as I Wish, After the Storm, Our Little Sister, and The Third Murder. Melancholia, directed by Lars von Trier. In my head, I see Lars von Trier two different ways. One is a masterful director, someone who has a great eye for vision and filmmaking. The other is a pretentious hack who just tries to shock the audiences as much as he can. It's sad that he feels like he constantly has to be this edgelord, but once in a while, we get a great film from him. And my 10th favorite film of the decade is Melancholia. Alright everybody, we're in the top 10 now. These are my top 10 favorite movies of the decade. Melancholia starts with one of the best openings I've ever seen in a film. A beautiful prologue, something like out of Persona or 8.5. Melancholia is a deep film that really analyzes depression like no other film does. I love the camera work where it makes all the people in the setting feel real. You feel like you're watching a home video of a wedding almost. But anyway, the plot revolves around another planet called Melancholia about to crash into Earth. Very metaphorical, yes? The film is about our protagonist's depression, played excellently by Kirsten Dunst, and also the other characters as they struggle to cope with the impending doom. Some scenes are shot on handheld, while others are just beautiful. Great lighting and colors. I love the shots of the sky, especially when the planet is about to crash. It's a beautiful film in that way, and is a strangely beautifully sad film about our protagonist's depression. Lars von Trier having depression himself, he treats the illness with a lot of seriousness. Once the planet is about to crash, it's an interesting shift in dynamics between Kirsten Dunst's character and the others. Melancholia is one of the most beautiful films of the decade, and is a great film about depression. These are the kind of films I love from Lars von Trier. If only he could get his head out of his butt. Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. What is perhaps my favorite Best Picture winner of the decade is Alejandro G. Iñárritu's masterpiece, Birdman. This film has got everything. Breathtaking tracking shots, all seamlessly stitched together with brilliant editing in order to make it all seem like one take. The film is very funny, but also dramatic too. The premise is very similar to something like BoJack Horseman. It's an old, washed-up actor trying to reclaim his fame. But more than just that, he wants to be important, he wants to be significant. And we soon learn that all the characters are doing something like that. They're all trying to cope with their existential fears and meaningless life. It's about art, it's about the meaning of art, it's about criticism. It's about the relationships that we want to make us happy. It's about finding happiness and wanting to mean something in this empty life. We're trying to find a meaning for existence to live on. But the film always keeps you invested. If you're not entranced by the long takes, you're laughing at the dark humor, or relating to the existential ennui of our protagonist. I love the soundtrack that's comprised only of drums. There's a great scene in the film where the characters are walking on the street, and you see a drummer making the tune that we're listening to. There's a big sense of reality and psychology in this film as well. It's philosophical. It's about so many things that if I sat here and thought about it more, I could probably make a whole list. It's entertaining, deep, exceptionally well shot, by the 1-3 amigo who I think made the best film of the decade out of his friends, Birdman or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. It's a must-see. Some people have said it's not as great as it was, but I think it still holds up. I get the same enjoyment I did when I first saw it. Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho. Yep, another recent film on the list, and the Academy Award winner for Best Picture. It's also the highest rated film on Letterboxd right now, but even past that, Parasite is still awesome. This is perhaps the ultimate genre bender of the decade. It's a thriller, it's a family genre, and it's also hysterically funny. Legendary South Korean actor Song Kang-ho gives one of his best performances. The whole cast has just become so iconic nowadays. You see Bong Joon-ho running around with the cast. It just seems like they're having a great time getting all the success that they deserve from this masterpiece. Some things I don't hear talked a lot about are the set pieces and the design of the house. Bong Joon-ho wrote the script with the design in mind. He even helped the set designers to make it. That's just how important it is to the screenplay. They didn't just find a house and work around it. Every instance of this film was integral to the idea and purpose. I'm really hoping people don't look at this movie and be like, oh, it's overrated, aside from the whole subtitle thing, but that's for another day. I really hope not, because Parasite truly is a fantastic film. The way it covers social class in such a deep way, visually, metaphorically, and emotionally through the characters. The choice that Song Kang-ho makes at the end is just such a crucial one for the themes of the film. Basically, the movie just gets more and more insane. I actually didn't know what the plot was when I went into this, and you can do the same thing. I wouldn't say it's the prime example of a movie to go in knowing nothing, but doing that with a lot of movies does help. About halfway through, once I thought I knew what the film was, in the middle there's a sudden twist, and I'm like, wow, okay, where is this gonna go? In the middle of the film, there's a scene that lasts maybe 30-40 minutes, and it just holds you for that whole time. It never lets go, and that's amazing for a film to do. It never feels like it drags. You want to attach yourself to it and see where everything goes. I love when scenes go on like that, but they hold you, they change and shift, and they just grasp you into this world, into this intensity. Things just get more and more insane and funny. You love watching this plan come together. You feel sad when you see them give up on the plan. Once again, that immaculate framing and orchestral score just pulls the whole tone and experience together. Parasite is so good, it hasn't even been out that long, and I'm already confident it's in my top 10 of the decade. This film made so many achievements which so many other movies try to perfect, but rarely attain, especially as well as Parasite. If you know anything about movies, you've heard the buzz. So don't waste any more time and go see it. Bong Joon-ho's best film of the decade, probably his best film ever made. The Master, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson is one of the great American directors today. He reflects that of Martin Scorsese or Robert Altman. He'll go down as history, as just what American cinema represents. My favorite film from his is There Will Be Blood, but that came out in 2007. But luckily my second favorite film from him is The Master. Where do I begin to describe this? The film is about a lost veteran who meets the founder of a religious cult. The film covers themes of philosophy, religion, trying to find your purpose, and your master in life. Who is your master? Joaquin Phoenix doesn't have a master, he just wanders around aimlessly, while Lancaster Dodd thinks that he's found the meaning of life. Atop from being a very thought-provoking film, what makes this film really great is the relationship. It's not just a philosophical movie, it's a drama about friendship and lost relations. That's what makes The Master really stand out over so many other movies. The cinematography is some of the best of the decade. The shot composition really takes you back to 1940s America. You really feel like you're there. Just the lighting and the framing is like no other. Anderson has also been shown to be a master of period pieces, and that's probably why the time frame of the film really fits so well. I love the dynamic between our two leads. Which yeah, let me talk about that. Joaquin Phoenix, who is one of my favorite actors of all time, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams. This is perhaps my favorite cast of the decade. Maybe not the biggest, but just the fact that these are such great actors, and they're all giving 100% is just divine to see on screen. Like I was saying before, I love the dynamic between our two leads. There's a specific shot in the film, which I think greatly contrasts the two characters and their motivations. They're sitting in complete darkness, with smoke billowing around them. Freddy seems to look off into the distance, aimlessly, with his mind numb. Lancaster, on the other hand, is pondering the great beyond. What will he find? What will he discover? The film doesn't really say any of these ideas are right, but it's about what people do in the face of our own existence. Freddy chooses a more extroverted, wild route, in which he tries to forget about his sadness and loneliness, through drinks, women, and the fun of having no master. However, he soon becomes rejuvenated when he meets a master, Lancaster Dodd. Lancaster is just as afraid as Freddy. However, he created a cult in order to comfort himself. He's a thinker, and considers himself to be a great man, since he founded a religion, wrote many books, and comes up with a lot of philosophical theories. Therefore, his existence has meaning now. Or does it? But once again, what really gets this film is just the relationship between these two characters. They seem like total opposites, like they come from different worlds, but they have quite a bit in common. The Master is an instant American classic. Such a great movie. Great directing, fantastic acting, and an interesting dynamic overall. Her, directed by Spike Jonze. This is one I've seen strangely omitted from a lot of lists, but my love for it hasn't waned. It's such a romantic, adorable, lovable film. My favorite actor, Joaquin Phoenix, once again stars as Theodore, a lonely man seeking a friend in the near future. I love the setting of this film. The film is set in the not-too-distant future, where basically all our physical necessities seem to have met. However, that doesn't fix our internal or emotional struggles. We're still lonely, and we're still seeking companions. I also adore Scarlett Johansson, and I think this is one of my favorite roles of her, even though it's just her voice. The film can be about a lot of different things. It's about the dangers of an over-reliance on technology. It can be a study of what is life, Can life exist in an AI? Although I don't think that's really what the film is going for. It's about our relationship, our literal relationship with technology. Joaquin Phoenix is the true star of this film. It's not necessarily a character study, but it uses him to explore the themes of emotion and thought, as those are the kind of things that Theodore is attracted to. He wants an intelligent yet sensitive woman, and he finds that in his AI system. The soundtrack, oh, I have to mention the Moon song. This became one of my favorite songs from a movie of all time. I love this song so much. It's such a sweet tune, and I've loved it since day one after I saw this film. It's about relationships, but it studies deeper human thoughts and feelings within Samantha, the AI system, and within human characters as well, like Theodore. While it explores these topics, the film manages to be quite funny at a lot of parts, but is mostly just endearing and sweet. The camera gets a lot of in-focus close-up shots of Joaquin Phoenix, as we're really meant to experience what he feels. I love the scenes in which he's talking to Samantha, and the camera shows what he's looking at, as if he's not actually talking to anyone, or maybe he is. It really puts you in the head and mindset of Theodore. It's such a brilliant choice, even though it's subtle. Her is one of the most sweetest films of the decade. I will love it till the end of time. Someone who became one of my favorite directors of all time, thanks to some of his great contributions of the years, is Yorgos Lanthimos. One of the most unique voices in cinema I've ever seen. Only a Czechoslovakia film is like his movies. His films are bizarre, disturbing, incredibly creative, funny, and sometimes satirical. While choosing which one of his films I wanted to put on here, I really couldn't decide. The Favorite is his most accessible film. Dogtooth is probably his best film, although that was 2009, so that doesn't count. Killing of a Sacred Deer is his most experimental film. But if I had to choose my personal favorite movie of Yorgos Lanthimos, it is The Lobster. This film is so fascinating, with its thematic content, yes, but not just like a philosophical film. It fascinated me in just how well it was written. There's so many great ideas. Every second is something wildly creative and inventive. I thought, God, I can never write something this imaginative. And trust me, I have a weird imagination. The film is mostly a dark comedy and is very funny, but is a satire on relationships and just how our society views them. That the only way for us to be happy is to be in a relationship. That the only way for us to get connected is silly little things like nosebleeds or limps. Lanthimos is a visionary master with beautiful cinematography as well. Colin Farrell, one of my favorite actors, gives a stupendous performance as he re-teams with Lanthimos as a sad, widowed man. But some scenes are still darkly funny. Others are inspired by Greek tragedies as well. Once again, the screenplay is just phenomenal. All the characters, all the things that happens. It's direly funny, wickedly blunt with its satire, but above all, wildly creative. I love Yorgos Lanthimos, and I love this movie. It's Such a Beautiful Day, directed by Don Hertzfeldt. The director of my previous mention, World of Tomorrow. This is Hertzfeldt's only feature-length film. Kind of. It's actually 3 short films, composed into one. The movie follows the life of Bill, a man suffering from all sorts of mental illness and existential crisis of life. My 4th favorite film of the decade is one of my top 3 favorite films of all time. This is without a doubt one of the best experiences I've ever had watching a movie. Much like Hertzfeldt's other work, it's incredibly funny, but also genius and thought-provoking. Not in a pretentious way at all. The film is very light-hearted, with a lot of random, absurd, and dark humor throughout. You just kind of watch this character's life, and you see as things slowly start to deteriorate. This is one of the best movies on mental illness, and I think it's a great movie for this generation, as the topics it covers, the style it's presented in, and just its unique sense of humor. Again, they're all stick figures, but that doesn't mean the film is visually bland. There's fantastic in-camera effects. Many parts of the films will show multiple scenes of different things going on, in little holes against a black background. It's a brilliant way just to convey everything that's going on, the madness, and just to show you different points of view at the same time. I can't stress enough just how much of an enjoyable, yet sad movie this is. I love comedy dramas, and I think that's why I love this film so much. It's hilarious, but it takes its subject matter very seriously, and you really feel sad for Bill. Some might not consider it technically a movie because it is 3 short films put together, so maybe that's why it's not talked about as much, but honestly, it will be a magnificent experience for you. It's Such a Beautiful Day. Funny, sad, deep, visually beautiful, great opera soundtrack. This has so much of what I look for in a movie, and it pleased me every second of the runtime. Upstream Color, directed by Shane Carruth. I saw this film just at the perfect time. I was just getting into movies when I saw this film, and it showed me just what the art form and medium is capable of. I didn't understand everything that I first saw, and, well, it's still hard for me to describe what it means, but that didn't mean I didn't enjoy the film. Just what this movie did with its narrative, its sound, its visuals and editing, its universal themes. I wanted to seek out more strange films like this. Despite the film being very weird in a way, it's not presented in like a David Lynch film where it's supposed to be disturbing. In fact, it's rather beautiful. It's about the mysteries of love, science, nature, and just how everything is connected. How we're connected. The mysteries of ourselves. I was talking about this movie with a friend, and I said, I understand it. I know exactly what this film is saying. However, I can't put it into words. And that right there is a movie. Representing things, saying things about life that can't be expressed through words. But I can tell you why I loved it through words. It's an out-of-this-world, metaphysical experience that I think is one of the greatest films of all time. I still think it holds up magnificently, and is one of the best, without a doubt, of the decade. It's strange, but it's beautiful, and I think you'll really connect to it. Because what this film is really about is the human soul. The soul of nature, the soul of the universe. If nature is science, then is nature really that complicated? Or if science is nature, then maybe it is very complicated. Who knows? See for yourself, enjoy the experience, let yourself be sucked into the mysticism of what the film has to offer, and come out a changed human being. Under the skin. There are aspects of this film that still blows me away. The most notable aspect being how it blends science fiction with documentary and neorealism. Yeah, that's right. A film about Scarlett Johansson who plays an alien killer sent to take men's bodies, which sounds like a cheesy B-horror movie, is actually one of the most deeply enriching, creepy, mesmerizing, and profound films of the decade. Many scenes in which Johansson's character talks to men were non-scripted. There were actual guys on the street. They put a bunch of cameras in a van, had her drive around, and filmed her picking up random men on the streets. The film has a lot to say about beauty, feminism, and what's truly beautiful. What truly lies under the skin. But overall, what I really love about this film is it's an experience. It's an outsider's experience as they venture through our planet and discover what human life is really about. And I love just how bare it is. It's not really a criticism of humans, but it's not celebrating them either. It's just showing us the way we are, through real alien eyes. Or through a camera, I guess. The scenes of the aliens' lair are just my favorite. Just the black background as they sink down into this water. It's so eerie but beautiful to look at. I just love it. And I must mention the soundtrack. This is without a doubt my favorite soundtrack of the decade. One of the most inventive soundtracks and styles of music I've heard. It's so eerie and avant-garde at the same time. It's our perception of beauty. It's unadulterated human life, blending bizarre science fiction with ultimate instances of reality, showing that maybe this film isn't so fictional as we think. This film is technically a horror movie, and while it is creepy, I find it mostly beautiful. I just love this protagonist. It's Scarlett Johansson's best role of the decade. Wait, did I say that for her? Oh shoot, I think I did. No, this is her best role. I take that back. I love Samantha, but my god, under the skin, she is incredible in this. There is dialogue in this film, but after watching it a few times, I realized this film doesn't need any dialogue. The dialogue is more meant to be a background thing. There's never any exposition at all. Everything you need is gathered through the visuals. If you took out all the dialogue of this film, you would get the same experience. Such a beautiful and profound film. Awesome music, awesome visuals, incredible performance. One of the most unique filming styles I've ever seen done in cinema before. Under the Skin will blow you away. I guarantee that. And my number one favorite film of the decade is The Tree of Life, directed by Terrence Malick. In decades to come, this will be hailed as one of the greatest films of all time, ranking among The Godfather, Citizen Kane, 8.5, Persona, Seven Samurai, Andrei Rublev. The Tree of Life is that great. It's a masterpiece in every way. Terrence Malick is probably the greatest living director right now. A true cinematic poet, if there ever was one. His images are beautiful, yet deeply meaningful. Even if you don't know it, you just feel it, and you know it means something to him. The Tree of Life is about the life of a boy set against the backdrop of creation in the universe. After all, that's how we all perceive existence, just through our own lives. It's usually never some grand journey, And while it seems like our character does that, it's more representative through the filmmaking style. I got the extended version on Criterion Collection, and I recommend that's the version you watch. One thing I was even more impressed with was Brad Pitt's performance and his character. He gets a lot more screen time and a lot more depth, and I think he's probably one of my favorite characters in movies. He's a tough, stern, no-nonsense father. However, the film really analyzes that, why he is the way he is, how he deals with that when people say they don't like him, is our main character's relationship with God, and his relationship with his father. Now, his father isn't meant to represent God. However, it is a similar relationship in a way. If his earthly father treats him this way, is that what his heavenly father does? He struggles with multiple conflicts throughout his life, so maybe that is. He struggles with God and existence. He becomes free at one point and becomes reckless. Oh, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. I did a huge review on this on my Letterboxd page. It's probably my longest one I've done, just analyzing the film and everything about it. Besides, the true star of The Tree of Life is the cinematography. My god, you want to talk about visually stunning? This is almost as good as 2001: A Space Odyssey. Every shot from this film could be the poster. Heck, the poster of this movie was just a bunch of shots from the film. Malick couldn't decide which one was the best one, so he just put them all on the poster. This was shot by Emmanuel Lubezki, my favorite cinematographer of all time. Just look at that natural lighting, the shadows. So many scenes of these are just my favorites. Some of the more metaphysical moments too, like some floating scenes. The birthing scene is beautiful. I love the scene with the curtain. Of course, the cosmic scenes are beautiful too, with Jack Fist, special effects director on 2001: A Space Odyssey, does an immensely fantastic job. This film is life as we know it. It answers our existential and philosophical troubles in a comforting way, which other films just don't. It's a profound but completely unpretentious movie. Terrence Malick is one of the most humble people you will ever see in interviews. He's just making art and expressing it the way he wants to. He's not trying to show off how much of a big brain he has, or how much he knows. It's just him sharing his thoughts and feelings with the world. I feel like I'm missing so much. I could just go on and on about the Tree of Life. But trust me, it is a mesmerizing, entrancing experience that will take you out of this world, into the next dimension, into the afterlife, and then plant you back on Earth, safe and sound, newly transformed. It's a spiritual, metaphysical journey that must be witnessed by all. The Tree of Life, Terrence Malick's masterpiece, and the greatest film of the decade. And there you have it, boys and girls. My top 30, plus more, favorite films of the decade. There's a lot of great ones that I missed. There's still some ones I haven't seen. There's still ones that I think are great that I just didn't put on here because of room. Because there was no room, really. What are your favorite movies of the decade? Anything you think I haven't seen that you want to recommend? Let me know. I want to see. I hope you guys like my list, and I hope you guys check out some of the films. I hope I showed you some of your new favorite films. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thumb the bell. And thanks so much for watching, everyone. Take care. Oh, wait. Also, Poehtboy is coming soon. I'm having some new creative ideas that I want to do. The script is done. The script is literally done. I have the props. I could film it. I think I'm about to film it soon. I could probably film it soon, but there's some other creative experiments, say, I want to try with this. Not like a Terrence Malick experimental, but like, you know, just other creative things I want to try with this video. So, I'll try to get it out as soon as I can. If I take these endeavors, it might come out a little later, but I'm working hard on the video. I'm really excited about this one. I think it's great. I think it's better than A. So yeah, stay tuned for more talks about movies, more Poehtboy videos. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for subscribing. I look forward to building my channel with you people. Take care.